DanMachi, or Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, is set in a fantasy world where humans and gods live side by side in carrying out their daily lives. In ancient times, the gods and goddesses who created the universe came down to the human world to seek inspiration. But after that, they decided to stay forever in the human world, simultaneously sealing their divine powers, to live a difficult life haunted by the discomforts of survival. Even so, the only power that the gods and goddesses still possessed was blessing, which they could give to humans to level up their powers by facing monsters in a dungeon, a lair of monsters that had various levels of difficulty, similar to how characters in video games level up. Adventurers are used to picking up items dropped from monsters to then exchange them for money. People who are given this power will become followers of gods, where each god has an association of followers called familia. One familia usually has many adventurers, except for the familia of the goddess Hestia, being the only goddess who only has one follower, a timid and weak-looking man named Bell Cranel. One day, Bell was hunting monsters in a level 5 dungeon that contained strong monsters, even though Bell's strength at that time was still not enough to fight the monsters in that place. Bell was confronted and badly cornered by a powerful monster called the Minotaur. When Bell gave up and was almost killed by the Minotaur, Bell was saved by a high-level female adventurer named Ice Wallenstein. Thus, Bell was amazed by Ice strength, and also fascinated by Ice beauty. Ice Wallenstein herself is a level 5 adventurer, known as the strongest fighter, who comes from the familia of the god Loki, one of the most famous familia in her city. After that incident, Bell unwittingly began to fall in love with Ice, making him want to become stronger so he could stand on an equal footing with Ice. Even so, it seems that what Bell was thinking was just wishful thinking, because sadly Bell was a poor person who lived in an abandoned church with the goddess of his familia named Hestia. Even so, they both seem happy to enjoy life, and eat leftovers potluck without complaining. Hestia felt guilty because her familia was unpopular and no one wanted to be a member of her familia other than Bell, which was the cause of their poverty, but Bell didn't mind that at all. After that, the blessing ability of the goddess Hestia was shown, which could check Bell's status. It turned out that Bell was still at level 1, and his status was fairly weak. However, there was one odd thing that seemed to be covered up by the goddess Hestia regarding Bell's skills. Hestia realized that Bell had acquired the magical skill Realist Phrase, which would level up Bell very quickly based on his strong feelings when he fought, but decided to keep it a secret as it made Bell extremely valuable and it was not impossible for other gods to try to get hold of Bell. In other words, wanting to be on par with Ice made Bell faster in raising his level and abilities. But the next day, after more adventuring, Bell's status increased drastically with his plans to be able to talk and become close to Ice. But Bell overheard Ice familia talking about how Bell had humiliated himself when fighting the Minotaur the previous day. Realizing how pitiful he was compared to Ice, Bell fled and unknowingly entered a dungeon and desperately killed as many monsters as he could to let off some steam. Bell only returned to Hestia in the morning covered in wounds and blood, increasingly inspired to become stronger. As his goddess, Hestia planned to support Bell wholeheartedly. Therefore, Hestia went to visit a fellow goddess named Hephaestus, a goddess who specialized in forging and making weapons. Hestia asks Hephaestus to make a weapon for Bell. After hours of humiliating herself in Dages's position just to make Hephaestus make a weapon for Bell, Hephaestus finally made a weapon in the form of a tanto, with the condition that Hestia still had to pay for it no matter how many centuries it took. The tanto has a special ability that is able to follow the development of its user. The stronger Bell gets, the stronger the weapon becomes. Before Hestia gave the weapon to Bell, Hestia insisted they go on a romantic date at a festival that was taking place in the town at the time. However, in the middle of the festival, a monster escaped and wandered through the city, which strangely targeted Bell and Hestia. Despite his fear, Bell fought the monster to protect Hestia. Unfortunately, his determination alone was not enough, as the weapon in his hand broke when attacking the monster. Because of that, Hestia then gave the tanto that Hephaestus had previously made to Bell, and the tanto was named the Hestia knife. By using his new weapon, Bell was able to surpass the power of this large monster, where he could very easily defeat the monster with just a few combinations of attacks. Unknowingly, many people saw Bell's actions, so he received considerable appreciation for indirectly saving the city from the rampage of this dangerous monster. The next day after Bell recovered, he wanted to explore the 7th floor dungeon. A receptionist named Aina was very surprised to hear Bell's request, remembering a few days before Bell almost died in the 5th floor dungeon. Bell confidently said that this time his ability had improved greatly compared to earlier, thus forcing Aina to check Bell's status in person. In the end, Aina also believed Bell, whose status had surprisingly increased drastically, and then gave Bell access to the 7th floor dungeon. But before that, Aina invited Bell to look for armor that matched his level, because weapons or abilities alone would not be enough. Accompanied by Aina, Bell obtained a new piece of armor, and she also gave Bell a handguard as a gift. The next day, Bell was ready to explore the 7th floor dungeon wearing the armor he had just bought. In front of the dungeon, Bell met a supporter named Lilaruka Arde, or Lily for short. Supporters themselves are people who offer services to help adventurers like Bell in dungeons. Usually, supporters are assigned to pick up dropped items. They both agreed and immediately started hunting in the dungeon with great ease, different from before when Bell always ended up with a lot of wounds on his body. Unfortunately, Lily had evil intentions toward Bell, where she intended to steal Bell's sword and then sell it. But when Lily sells Bell's sword, the price is not worth what she got, because the sword becomes dull when separated from its user, Bell. Luckily, one of the waitresses from the Hostess of Fertility named Ryu Leon managed to find Lily, who was holding the sword, so Bell's sword was returned, but he didn't know that Lily had tried to steal and sell his sword. Not only that, Bell, with the kindness of his heart, even divided the money they earned from the dungeon evenly, shocking Lily because all of her previous partners barely paid her. After finishing hunting, Bell returned to headquarters and told Hestia what had happened. Hestia tried to warn Bell about Lily being from the Soma Familia, a familia known for being filled with criminals and thieves. But even after knowing this information, Bell still chose to trust Lily as his supporter. A few days later, Bell decided to take a break from his activities as an adventurer. On his day off, he visited the Hostess of Fertility and met one of the maids named Seerflova. The two of them were already quite close and could be considered friends. Then Seer lent a book to Bell to fill his day off, which Bell happily accepted. After finishing reading the book, Bell suddenly got a new ability, the Firebolt spell. Even Hestia was quite surprised at this, considering that Bell had so far no affinity for magic. Hestia just realized that the book Bell was reading before was a grimoire, which was able to grant magic abilities to its readers. In that way, Bell had once again grown stronger than before. In order to try out his new ability, Bell went into the dungeon alone. But being unaccustomed to magic, Bell forced himself and he fainted. In this situation, Bell is found by Ice, who puts his head on her lap to wake him up. It's just that Bell was embarrassed after realizing that he had fallen asleep on Ice's lap and then ran off in embarrassment. After that, Bell returned to his hunting activities as usual while intending to try his new ability. This time, Bell and Lily will try to explore the 10th floor dungeon, a vast expanse filled with dry trees and has a gloomy and dark nuance. Bell fought the monsters there with a combination of physical and magical attacks. He could survive quite well against the many monsters there, until finally, Lily took advantage of the situation to openly betray Bell by stealing Bell's equipment, including his Hestia knife. In the midst of her escape, Lily was intercepted by several adventurers from other Soma Familia, where all her belongings were taken and she was left in the middle of a crowd of monsters. Lily could only resign herself to accept her fate, thinking that this might be the proper payback for betraying Bell, who had always been kind to her. Not long after that, Lily was surprised by the appearance of Bell at the scene, who burned the crowd of monsters down with his firebolt. Apparently, Bell managed to survive the crowd of monsters in the 10th floor dungeon thanks to the help of Ice Wallenstein, who secretly helped him from behind the thick fog. In this situation, Lily was confused as to why Bell had come to save her despite what she had done. Lily cried, admitting all the crimes she had done to Bell, while Bell just smiled and forgave all of Lily's mistakes. Bell's kindness is able to change a con artist like Lily, so the two then form a true friendship. After that incident, Bell brought Lily before Hestia, where Lily intended to become a member of the Hestia Familia, so Hestia accepted Lily to become the second member. After that, Bell went to the guild and saw Aina talking to Ice. Although Bell initially wanted to run away out of embarrassment, Ice tried to stop him, and this was the first time they spoke to each other. It turned out that Ice wanted to return Bell's arm guard, which had previously fallen on the 10th floor dungeon. From here, Bell also realized that the person who had saved him earlier was Ice. For the umpteenth time, Bell was saved by Ice, making him want to become stronger so he doesn't need to be protected by Ice anymore. Surprisingly, Ice agrees to train Bell to get better at combat. During the exercise, Bell continuously got beaten, but he kept getting up again and again, making Ice ask why Bell was so persistent. Bell replied that he wanted to be strong in order to be able to get closer to someone, but Ice didn't realize that what Bell meant was Ice herself. A few days later, the adventurers wanted to organize an expedition into the dungeon. High-level adventurers gathered and cooperated with each other, with the aim of heading to the unexplored 59th floor. Bell also participated in this expedition with Lily, where they explored dungeons together. But when they arrived at the 9th floor dungeon, they were confronted by the all-powerful Minotaur. A monster as strong as the Minotaur shouldn't be on the 9th floor, so Bell just froze in silence. It was in this situation that Lily saved Bell, who was just stunned, while Lily was seriously injured and knocked out. At this rate, Bell had no other choice but to fight the Minotaur alone, even though he himself was terrified and barely managed to keep up with it. When Bell was badly battered and injured, Ice Group finally arrived at the location and tried to help Bell. Different from before, this time Bell refused to be helped again and again by Ice, so he wanted to overcome his fear of facing the Minotaur with his own strength. Pushing himself to his limits, Bell succeeded in making the Minotaur retreat, until in the end, he managed to defeat the Minotaur by cutting it up with his own sword, to then end it with the firebolt. Thanks to that battle, Bell's abilities improved drastically and he also obtained a rare item, a Minotaur's horn. With the monster defeated, Bell stood victorious and unconscious, leaving everyone who witnessed, including Ice, speechless, especially after realizing that all of Bell's abilities were S rank. Shortly after, Bell awakens back at home, comforted by Hestia, reminiscing on how strong he's grown. From that fight, Bell is not only respected by other adventurers but has also officially increased to level 2, getting a new skill called Argonaut that allows him a charge for a counterattack, which he got because of his desire to become a hero with the same name, Argonaut. Meanwhile, due to his previous battle, Bell had no armor left, therefore, he was looking for the armor of the same type known to be made by a blacksmith named Welf Krazo. Coincidentally, Bell met Krazo in person at the armor shop. Unexpectedly, Krazo surprisingly offered Bell a contract. The contract was that Krazo would make armor, weapons, or whatever Bell needed, and in return Krazo wanted Bell to include him in his party. There's no specific reason why Krazo wants to join Bell's party, but the two get along well and can work well together against monsters in dungeons. Therefore, instead of being allowed to join Bell's party and adventure together, Krazo immediately made a new weapon made from the Minotaur's horn that Bell had previously obtained, named Ushiwakamaru. Sometime later, Bell along with Krazo and Lily prepared themselves to head into the dungeon's middle floors. Besides containing stronger monsters, the middle floors also contain far more monsters. They were also preoccupied with fighting monsters that seemed endless. At the same time, there was a team that was running away from being chased by monsters. They were adventurers who came from the Takamikazuchi familia. The team ran towards Bell, then just passed him by, causing the monsters that had previously been chasing Takamikazuchi familia to now start targeting Bell's party. Of course, Bell and his friends couldn't face that many monsters, so they decided to run away from the monsters' pursuit. Although in the end, they managed to escape from the monsters, Krazo was hit by attacks from the monsters and was injured badly enough that Bell had to carry him, making the journey even more difficult for them. Even worse was when a horde of Minotaurs appeared before them, forcing Bell to fight them all alone. With the determination to protect his friends, coupled with using the Argonaut skill, Bell was able to defeat all of the Minotaurs after a very fierce battle that drained a lot of his energy. For a while, Bell and his party members were still safe, but Lily had started to run out of energy and finally fainted in the middle of the road. In this way, Bell had to run to save himself, while protecting his friend. On the other hand, Hestia was visited by Takamikazuchi familia who apologized for their actions, which made things difficult for Bell's party. Hestia, who received this news, asked all of them to help save Bell, whose status was still unknown at this time. Unexpectedly, other than Takamikazuchi familia who joined the special team to search for Bell's whereabouts, quite a number of people had joined Hestia. For example, the god Hermes and his assistant, and also Ryu Leon. Even though God and Goddess were forbidden from entering the dungeon, Hestia and Hermes insisted on joining, with Hestia leading the quest. Meanwhile, Bell was still trying to walk while carrying his two comrades. From a wall, appeared the figure of a giant monster, making Bell push himself to the limit to run from the giant monster. During his escape, Bell accidentally entered a passage and fell into a place filled with a large expanse of green grass, called the Under Resort, or the dungeon safe zone on the 18th floor. There Bell met other adventurers, including Ice who happened to be there, and Ice helped heal the wounds suffered by Bell and his party members. Bell and his party members were very well received there, not to mention that someone of a low level like Bell being able to reach the 18th floor could be said to be a rarity. On the night after everyone's recovered, Hestia's team finally arrived on the 18th floor. Hestia burst into tears of joy when she saw that Bell was in good condition. Not only that, but Takamikazuchi Familia also apologized to Bell's party for endangering their lives, which Bell very easily forgave, saying that he might also do the same thing to save the lives of his friends. After that, they also enjoyed the beauty of Under Resort together. There was also a small village founded by adventurers, and the place was named Riviera. It was hard to believe that all of this was still in the dungeon. Bell and the other adventurers took time to relax before continuing on their way. However, it was calm before the storm. The next day, a problem arose that everyone at Under Resort never expected. Hestia was kidnapped by a group of adventurers who were displeased with the growth and fame that rookie adventurers like Bell were getting. They deliberately kidnapped Hestia to lure Bell alone so they could beat Bell up with satisfaction. But in the middle of the battle, surprisingly Hestia released her divine power, making everyone who had been fighting each other instantly calm down and fall to their knees before Hestia. Thus, the enemy finally ran away. Just when everyone thought matters were over, there was the roar of the previous gigantic monster from the floor above. Unexpectedly, the gigantic monster who later became known as the Black Goliath, the boss of the 17th floor, barged into the Under Resort, which was supposed to be a safe zone. It seemed that Black Goliath was provoked by the divine power released by Hestia, so he then barged in, wreaking havoc there. When some of the adventurers attempted to escape, they found that all escape routes had been closed off, meaning there was no way out until they defeated the floor boss. That way, all the people who previously fought and clashed with each other, in the end, decided to unite with each other to defeat the boss. However, even though everyone had gathered their strength, it was still not enough because the floor boss was continuously regenerating, no matter how much damage it took. Even though they had wanted to give up because the boss's abilities were too strong, they saw a chance to defeat the floor boss after Bell used his Argonaut power and managed to have a big impact on the boss. Hence, everyone distracted the monsters that were increasingly surrounding them, while Ryu, Krazo, and a few others distracted the boss to create an opening for Bell to launch an attack with the Argonauts a second time with a magic sword. That way, Bell has enough time to charge up Argonaut and hit the final blow to the boss, destroying the core before it can regenerate again. After this incident, Bell became even more respected by everyone. Bell, who is a level 2 adventurer, has succeeded in defeating Black Goliath, who is a floor boss. As everyone cheered for their victory, Hermes exclaimed in joy, saying that Bell was actually the last of his familia, and had the potential to become the hero this world needed.